What's going on, guys?
What's up?
How we doing?
Doing well.
Good.
We've got a heck of a show for you all today. I'm super excited. But before we get to our guest, we're going to be talking about the evolution of the human brain and whether or not we think it's caught up to modern society. I can certainly think of some examples of pros and cons. I'm curious, Kristen. You think the human brain has caught up to modern society?
Maybe only when people are making a conscious effort.
Okay. All right. So it takes an act of will, maybe?
Well, yeah, and everybody's different, right? I mean, like, sexuality is a basic instinct, but some people can look at it for its potential dangers, like those sorts of things.
Right. You can look at it from different perspectives. What about you, Luis?
Is it possible that the human brain is ahead of society?
Ahead of society?
It should be possible.
What do you mean?
I mean, like, we have all of this technology, all of these wonderful advancements. 99.9% of us don't know how they work, don't know how they, how to put them together. It's almost like that Carl Sagan thing where it's, all of this technology that we don't know how it works. So if it broke and there was no way to fix it, no repair shop or anything like that, you'd be out of luck. So
you're kind of talking about the extraordinary specializations of skills that create the infrastructure for modern society, and if our geniuses went away, we'd kind of be back in the Stone Ages.
Well, it's almost like I feel like the technology's almost there to get to other worlds, and we haven't figured out our own world. So in a way, like, the brain itself is ahead of the Star Trek dream,
no pun intended,
where it's, there's no currency, everybody, there's no borders on Earth,
right?
We are truly one civilization, and that's a scary thought for constitutionalists and independent thinkers, and it's one world government, conspiracy.
Oh, yeah.
But in that way is how I feel like it hasn't caught up.
Interesting. Well, I'm super stoked because we've got an amazing guest today who just may put us in our places when it comes to our own speculation. Truly, this is a fascinating subject and truly extraordinary. So I want to welcome this gentleman. He wrote a book recently called Good Reasons for Bad Feelings. He's an American physician, scientist, and author who's notable for his role as the founder of the field of evolutionary medicine and evolutionary psychiatry. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Randolph Ness, who prefers to be called Randy. Welcome, Randy.
Thanks, Mike. So glad to be with you all. This is going to be an interesting discussion.
I'm super excited for it. So why don't you kind of kick us off? Because we're sitting here kind of kicking around these ideas and speculating on what modern society has in store for the modern human, and whether or not the evolution of our brain has been optimized for this sort of living situation. And I'd love to get your take, because this is obviously something that's near and dear to your heart, and it's something that you've researched heavily. Where are we right? Where are we wrong?
It sure is. I mean, my gosh, we're badly matched to our modern societies, right? And we know that. But if it's okay with you guys, I want to go back to the body before we do the mind, because when I first got into this, I was trying to figure out how evolution could help us understand mental disorders. And I quickly realized that nobody paid any attention unless we first did physical disorders. And that is what gave rise to evolutionary medicine, now a very fast growing field. But with the idea of things being different now, here's where things really got different. It's when our ancestors first stood upright.
Okay.
Let's all feel sorry for them for a second. I mean, listen to this: back pain, ankle pain, hemorrhoids, hernias, you name it, varicose veins, and we still got them hundreds of thousands of years later.
Right. So the evolution to moving from walking on all fours to being a bipedal human has created all sorts of calamitous ailments.
And, natural selection is getting better, but just imagine what it would have been like to be one of those first primates who's going around on 2 feet. They must have hurt all the time. It's bad enough now, we all have back pain one time or another, but geez, must have been really terrible. Then something happened in the mind that's kind of comparable. Language 50,000 or 100,000 years ago, and the complexities of society, instead of just grunting at other people and trying to sniff out who's your relative and who's you're not. I mean, that is a gigantic transition too. And I don't think we're coping with it better. Amazing things. Isn't it amazing we can remember the names of all these people and like them or dislike them and, form alliances with people? It's astounding, but it's all kind of new, and we've got a long ways to go. And I think there are problems just as bad as all those hemorrhoids and varicose veins and, and all those things in our minds. But that's not what you guys asked in the first place, right? You wanted to know more about, hey, is all this new tech stuff screwing us up royally?
Sort of. I mean, I don't know if it's just tech, but like the living in cities versus living in tribal societies. Like, was there any evolution physically of the brain between 150,000 years ago and today? Like, or is it the same brain, but now we're living in these cities and there's all this technology? Like, what do you think?
So the first really big cities were in the Bronze Age in the Mediterranean, about 80,000 years ago. And no, there were 80,000 people, is what I meant to say, in the Bronze Age. And
80,000 people?
In certain cities in Mesopotamia, okay. Right.
Okay.
Before that, there weren't any cities.
Right.
And because the kings had so much power and they wanted to keep track of who was stealing stuff from the palace, they had to invent writing.
Right.
To keep track of their accounts and everything. And all they cared about first was how many chickens came into the palace and how many left the palace and the like. But gradually that whole writing thing evolved until we get complex scripts and the ability to represent things abstractly. And before you know it, we're all on Twitter. and trying to make sense of each other's tweets.
I love. There is no exits between counting chickens coming into the door and Twitter, huh?
But the other thing that I'm very concerned about, and everybody should be, is there now an epidemic of depression?
Right.
And I took the trouble to look it up yet again. I look it up every year to see what the new data is. And yeah, it does look like rates are increasing a little bit over the last 10 years. But like maybe an 18%. Everybody says, oh my God, things are really so bad now and everything's going to hell. Homer, in his poems, The Art of Poetry, he talks about how our age is worse than our grandsires. We, their sons, are more worthless. Our sons will be worse than us. Everything's going to hell.
Right.
In every age, people think it used to be better.
Right. Isn't that interesting? It's almost like every generation of parents thinks the children of this generation are worse.
Right.
Exactly.
It reminds me, man, I used to play a poker game in New York City when I lived there. And there was this, this sort of the senior of the group, right? He was a protester in the Vietnam War. He'd done and seen it all through his life, and he's sitting here playing poker with us. Really funny, great guy. His name's Frank, and I would get really worked up about politics and what we need to do, and this is good. Like, it's never been worse than ever. And he would say to me, kiddo, that's what every single generation says. Said it's never been worse than before. And just 30 years back, we were, or not 30, but 40, 50 years back, we were drinking out of different water fountains. The way we looked at people when we hired them or gave them loans was completely different than it is today. And it takes a lot of time to get through these growing pains, especially when you have a country, based on a currency of slavery. Like, it's hard to rip everything that goes with that right out in just one foul swoop. So it's interesting that you said that. That's just, it made me think of that.
Yeah. So do you guys think that there's kind of a human tendency for either optimism or pessimism? I mean, some people are into apocalypse, and hunkering down and living off the
Yeah.
grid. And other people are saying, hey, actually things are getting better all the time. The murder rate's lower and fewer people in poverty, but dramatically. It's interesting.
Yeah. I read a book, I believe it's called Abundance Now by Steven Pinker.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he's talking about.
Big
He's
on the
saying,
optimist side.
yeah, he's the optimist side. And we were talking about this recently, too, because we were talking about climate change a couple weeks ago. And there's like kind of these two different roles that people play. It's either the wizard, technology is going to save us, or the prophet, we're all doomed. And it seems to be humans have this propensity to pick one side or the other. I know I pick the wizard. My wife here picks the prophet.
Like an hour ago, I had my daughter look up whether you can buy Narcan because I heard on the news about how many people, need help. And I thought it would be a good neighborly thing to have it in my first aid kit.
I never would have thought to have Narcan on hand.
So actually, if you live in a neighborhood where there's a lot of people ODing, you can save a life with Narcan.
Sure.
That's kind of a serious thing. Yeah. But let's go further into the evolutionary angle on all of this. So why on earth do moods exist at all? That's one question. That's the first one. And then the second one is
that rhetorical, or are you asking? Sorry, say again.
Well, I mean, first, why do we have moods at all?
Right.
And the second is why are so many people plagued by depression and variable moods? And what's really been missing, I mean, my whole mission here, and not here, but my whole career, is to bring basic evolutionary biology to bear on mental problems. If you study animal behavior, it's all based on evolution. They're trying to figure out why animals do what they do and how doing what they do increases reproduction and helps them survive better, And that is a missing foundation for psychiatry. And I think as we bring it in, we're going to be asking these new questions like, hey, instead of just figuring out who's depressed and why, that is figuring out why some people are depressed and other people aren't, let's ask the question about why all of us have a capacity for low mood. Notice I call it low mood because if you call it depression, it kind of seems like it's abnormal before you even turn around.
Right.
Do you think
I think there are answers to these questions that we're gradually agreeing on, those of us in evolutionary psychiatry. Actually, as soon as I say evolutionary psychiatry, for your audience and all of us, it sounds like some kind of wacky, new agey kind of special way of treatment, right?
Oh, trust me, this show is not a stranger to new age wacky ideas.
and in that case, I especially want to emphasize that it's not. It's just it's not a method of treatment at all. In fact, I wish I had simple, easy cures for people. But what I'm trying to do, I mean, everybody else, lots of people come on your podcast, I'm sure, and they have pretty good answers for everybody and make everybody feel better by, meditating or something or another. And my goal is different from that. I don't have any quick solutions, but what I do have to offer is fundamental explanations for why moods exist in the first place. And to give you the global overview of that, why would an individual who had moods, feeling pretty good sometimes and pretty pessimistic other times, why would that person do better than other people? And the answer is, hey, if the environment is always the same, he wouldn't do better, right? But if there's good times and there's bad times, and there's good times, you got to go out and harvest everything as fast as you can before the storms come or before the fruit is gone or before somebody else takes it. You better spend as much energy as you can and take risks. And that makes positive mood really useful.
Right.
Likewise, there are bad times. And when bad times, if you go out there just willy-nilly saying, hey, everybody else thinks that there's snow 4 feet deep and it's 20 below zero, but I'm going to go find some food. So bye-bye, that guy's never coming home again. So in that situation, and that's the key to understanding emotions, to ask, in what situation is this emotion useful? And I'm giving just a really, really crude summary, right, of all of this. Because as soon as I say, pursuing goals and making progress or not, I realize that, the goals we pursue, they're all social goals, really, these days. It's trying to get people to like us, trying to do what people appreciate, trying to deal with enemies and all the rest. So it gets instantly complicated because everybody's striving for attention and status and other kind of stuff. And you can say you don't want to do it, but then nobody pays any attention to you.
And then you feel lonely and outcast.
The emotion part. We can come more to the the modern life kind of thing in a minute, but I thought you'd appreciate a little bit of a background about why these emotions exist at all.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You had a question, Kristen?
Oh, I was wondering if a part of where the depression and the mood comes in is we have so much more time to dwell on it now than people did in the past. Like they were so busy just not dying.
Right. Or just going out and getting food, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so much will work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. This idea that the modern human has so much time on their hands that there's more, even though they're the same moods, right? They're the same desires, the same needs, the same evolutionary advantage of, having more, doing more, kill more meat, have more children, find more, build your tribe's population, right? Those things mattered, and you were busy doing those things in tribal societies. You didn't really have too much time to dwell. But maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe that's not true.
So we do have some evidence about this. There are major differences in depression rates between different countries. And the highest depression rates are, guess what? Good old USA. USA and Afghanistan. Guess what? A lot of people in Afghanistan are depressed, not just right now, but for the past 10 years, because everything is unstable. You can't look forward to getting a place for your family and taking care of your kids and things.
That's an interesting point. I was watching a documentary recently, and they were interviewing somebody. I don't believe it was Afghanistan. I think it might have been Syria. I can't remember the Middle Eastern country, but they were saying, you have all of these, maybe it was Afghanistan, you have all of these advantages now, you have all of these freedoms, you have all these liberties that you didn't have before. And she actually said she preferred the knowledge of order versus the fear of chaos. And she'd actually, even though she had less freedom, she'd actually prefer the order to the freedom. What are your thoughts on that?
You're not supposed to say stuff like that, right?
I know. That's why we have podcasts.
That's right. So I lived in Berlin for a year, and one of my German teachers was a woman who'd grown up in East Germany. And I just assumed that she would have this attitude of, sure, glad I got out of that, repressive communist regime. But no, she said that where they lived in East Berlin, there was a very tight neighborhood. Nobody worried about starving. People had medical care. And it wasn't so damn competitive that everybody was always clawing over everybody. Kind of a big contrast with modern Berlin, to say nothing of New York or any place around here.
LA.
Yeah, then there's LA. So what I was getting towards is the contrast between the USA and India is also very high in depression. Syria is another at the top of the list. But the bottom of the list are Korea and Japan. Rates of more like 2.5% per year compared with 6 to 8% per year. And that's very interesting. I don't have a great explanation for this, but if we could get depression rates in the USA down to those in Korea and Japan, that would do more good for the mental health of the country than all the treatment we're putting in together.
I might have a radical idea as to why.
Say a little bit louder.
I said I might have a radical idea as to why that is.
Okay.
There's no racial division in those countries, especially Japan. Like there's only Japanese people who live there, and they're on an island. And I don't. It's almost going back to like the order of things. So, is that possible? Is it possible to get a country like ours where it's a melting pot of cultures? And ideas and different ways of thinking to a level of Japan. I feel like Japan, it's a lot easier to do that. I mean, first of all, there's a regime.
Lot of depression in Japan. There's a lot of suicide in Japan.
There's a high suicide rate, but it's because I think part of that is the regime, right? They wait, like so it's cultures that they routinely do from an old regime in a modern society. Like they all exercise in the morning, how they eat, what they eat, where they go, the expectations on work and school and your love life. All of those pressures are super high. But there's never, well, I know I'm not going to get this job because I'm not going to meet the quota. It's everybody there looks and does the same thing. So I'm wondering, could that be why their depression rate is a lot lower than ours? And is it possible to do that in a country with, again, a melting pot? Yeah.
So, Luis, what a good question. And that's one of about 10 things that people should look into, including diet and exercise. And there's social hierarchies in Japan. And there's much more cohesiveness instead of people just being off by themselves. In this country, people move across the country by themselves and get a job and move into an apartment by themselves. Really? I mean, and I'm going to pause here for just a second before we go on to more about how screwed up we can get in modern societies. and just notice that the astounding thing about our species is that we can live almost any place and we can adapt to almost anything.
Right.
I mean, from the savannah in Africa to the Arctic, and there's some physical adaptations, but really complicated changes in social life are essential, from hunter-gatherer bands to cities of 80,000 people in just a few hundred years. And then all those cities collapsing and people having to find their way again. I mean, it's astounding. And there are even people who can live in LA.
Luis is one of them.
I'm one of them. Yep, that's me. Yeah, that's wild. Let me ask you this: what is it that is causing? You said the two highest countries with the highest rates of depression are the United States and Afghanistan, which are complete opposites. What's going on in the U.S. that is depressing people? Is it? I mean, I have a guess, but
Luis, I can make up stuff.
Yeah,
but I'm a serious scientist and Institute for Social Research, and you need reams of data, and even then, it's really hard to tell. Right. I mean, questions I'd like to see do have to do with race and the socioeconomic gradients in different states. I think there's data showing that the higher the socioeconomic gradient, the more differences between rich and poor, the more mental problems and especially depression there are. But I'm not even sure about that. There are people who spend their lives on this kind of thing. And I just wish they could expand their vision to not only different countries, but I've been trying to talk with my anthropologist friends about, so how common is depression for hunter-gatherer groups? Are they all happy?
Right.
And they kept telling me no depression in my group, no depression in my group. And then one of my good friends came back and said, well, actually, we started a health clinic for our hunter-gatherer band. And the problems that people came in are, I can't sleep. I don't feel like eating. I don't feel like having sex. I just feel like I'm a worthless person. I said, whoa. And here's a kicker for that. He said it reliably happened about 6 months after to whoever became the chief.
Oh, interesting. The social pressures.
Data. These are just stories.
Sure. But it's interesting because it's like this idea of hierarchical pressure, right? The more responsibility you have, the more propensity you have. Like, okay, let's go back. We don't even have to make assumptions or speculations. Let's go back to, ancient society, right? So people needed, human beings evolved the need to avoid pain, to feed themselves, to find pleasure, to be a part of a group, right? We all as human beings survived and adapted because of the strength of our relationships within groups. And now we live in this modern society where we have just massive groups of people, right? You can see, and people, look for, they follow fame and they keep up with the Kardashians, and they're always feeling inferior because they're comparing themselves to others. That may have been advantageous in a tribal society. Keeping up with your tribe was important, making sure you're following the social norms, making sure those, you're keeping the tribe together. But now it's just so vast, and how do you cope?
So envy sounds like bad stuff, right?
It sounds like it, but is it? Right.
Let's do the same thing we did with mood. Why does envy exist? Envy exists because individuals who see other people getting the stuff that they don't have often try to get that. And worse than that, they try to cut down the person who has what they don't have.
Right.
And this brings us to some ideas of a fellow named John Price, an English psychiatrist who died about 8 or 10 years ago. Brilliant, wonderful man. And he actually watched chickens, and he watched them pecking each other. And you know about the pecking order in chickens? It's a real thing. And the chicken who loses a pecking order battle kind of hides off by himself and avoids pecking anymore because he's just going to get beat up. And then John Price started looking at vervet monkeys. And they too fight for status, 2 or 3 males, fighting for status over females and the like. That's what they do. And he noticed especially that the dominant male had bright blue testicles. And if that male lost to some other male who took over the troop, the testicles turned gray, and that monkey went off by itself and huddled and rocked and looked depressed for all the world. And John Price came up with the idea of what he called involuntary yielding. And his idea is that if you lose a status battle and just keep on fighting, you're going to get beat up, either socially or physically. And if in fact you have a view of yourself, which might be unrealistic, but nonetheless, if you have a view of yourself of, hey, I'm not up to it, that might actually save you from all those terrible things. This is an odd idea, right? We're supposed to all be out there winning and fighting and succeeding and being positive, right? But his idea is quite profound, I think. There's a fair amount of evidence that this is true for many cases of depression. I don't think it explains all depression. I mean, you can frame everything in terms of status competition. Your kid gets into drugs. That means you lose status. I think you care about your kid. And the like. But isn't it an interesting idea?
Yeah. No, it's a very interesting idea. And, it could be both. And there's a multitude of reasons. I really like this idea that you brought up earlier about mood levels versus, just defining things as depression, because everything is a spectrum, right? There's nothing. And now I don't know if modern psychiatrists have a specific threshold where once you cross this line on the spectrum, that's what they consider clinical depression. I'm sure it's something to that effect, but I am curious about this idea of, mood management and how you talked about, there's times when being an optimist has extraordinary possibilities and results, and other times where being an optimist will kill you. And vice versa for a pessimist.
So I think the broadest perspective I have to offer on these kinds of problems of mood is to actually encourage people to have some respect for their moods, but because they might be meaningful, but not too much. Because here's a generalization that I've been giving lectures about in the last few months. The majority of bad feelings we have are perfectly normal, but completely useless.
Say that one more time.
The majority of bad feelings we have, especially anxiety, it's usually, there's nothing wrong with the brain. It's perfectly normal, but the emotion is perfectly useless to us. And the first reason for that is the smoke detector principle, which I've written about for many years. But the idea is very simple. Having the annoyance of a smoke detector go off is really peanuts. If it doesn't go off when there's really a fire, you're going to die. And so we all put up with smoke detectors that go off at the least hint of smoke. Likewise, our anxiety system in general is programmed to go off a lot of times when it's not useful. Panic attacks, and I often tell the story about somebody in Africa, hearing a little rustling behind a boulder near a watering hole. And here's what they hear. Grr. That. Grr. If it was that, they'd run. If it was grr, then they wouldn't run. It's just grr. So how loud does that noise have to be before it's wise to run?
Right.
And if you figure that running might cost you 100 calories, and not running, if it's a lion there, might cost you 100,000 calories
in your life.
That means that you should run every single time the noise is loud enough to indicate a 1 in 1,000 chance of the lion being there. And that means that the vast majority of panic attacks are going to be normal but unnecessary in that individual circumstance. This applies to all of medicine, actually. I mean, pain, fever, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, all those things. I mean, they go off whenever they're useful, whenever the benefits are greater than the costs. And I think the reason doctors can give us pills to stop those things safely most of the time is because of the smoke detector principle.
Damn. That's profound. That's profound, because I think, so often people can feel like there's something wrong with them when they have panic attacks, or there's something wrong with them when they're feeling low, or there's something wrong with them when they're obsessing about what that person thinks about them. But these are all very normal, evolutionarily caused.
Except when they're not.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
A lot of times, I mean, some people have their mother and their grandmother and their brother and their sister all have panic attacks for no reason, just out of the blue. And
Right.
that's a disease, So I think trying to generalize and say that, but you're absolutely right, Mike, that I found it enormously helpful for my patients. I spent 30 years hoping to develop the anxiety disorders clinic at University of Michigan. So I saw really hundreds or even thousands of patients with panic disorder. And at first I tried to tell them, well, you know what, you have a mental illness and we're going to give you the right meds and the right treatments and you're going to get better. And then they said, no, doctor, I can feel it in my heart, But when I started instead saying, you know what you're having is a reaction that would be really useful to save your life if you were running away from a lion, then a little light bulb went on. And they said, whoa, that makes sense to me. And then I tried to explain how they were having false alarms. And knowing that they were false alarms helped them enormously to do their behavior therapy exercises and actually get better a lot faster. It's the most practical implication of evolutionary psychiatry I know of.
Wow.
Can I ask you, when you, and I know like this is not an advice thing, right? But when Randy Ness gets low or has those emotions that he knows are normal, because I'm sure as most humans you have these, how can you walk? Is there any advice, or can you walk somebody through who may say dwell on those low points a little too long, or overthink or over anxious, but it makes themselves anxious about things that haven't happened yet, bridges they haven't crossed? Because
Louise,
this is something I've learned how to do. It's taken me, I feel like 40 years to figure it out. But this idea of, I used to get really, really, really anxious about things that were either coming up or it was a goal or whatever. And I would waste all of this anxiety and this energy on thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it, that eventually I just had to let it go. And wherever the chips fall, they fall. So what do you have a process when you go through stuff like this?
When you have a bad feeling, what I do and what I encourage my patients to do is to stop and ask, am I in one of the situations in which this bad feeling would be normal? That's question one. And question two is, even if it's normal, is it useful? Because most of the time, those feelings are not useful. I mean, the smoke detector business is only the first part of it. The second part is that the whole damn system is not designed for our benefit. It's designed for our genes' benefit. Have you guys ever noticed that sex is a big problem for people? It's like everybody wants sex that they can't have. And if they do have it, then they get in trouble. And but
yeah, okay, yeah.
Go on.
but that whole business, I mean, it's good for our genes. And there are drives trying to get us to do stuff to reproduce and do stuff that's good for our genes that destabilize our lives. But also you can tell people, quit worrying about sex, and that doesn't work.
Right. Just don't think about it.
Work for a second.
Right. So what do you suggest?
I wish I had some quick answers. So another one that we're coming to, another reason why bad feelings are usually useless but normal, is because we're in wildly different environments than we used to be. Right. Let's get back to what you said about that before, Mike.
Right.
People on Facebook, everybody says Facebook makes you feel bad. Actually, people spend most of their time on Facebook apparently looking at other people who are less well off than they are emotionally and in other ways. Wow. And it makes them feel better.
Right. That's an interesting.
That's why people watch the Kardashians.
Right. This is why people watch reality television. My sister adores reality television. She's a smart woman. She's a really smart woman. I'm like, you love reality television? She's like, I love it. But I think that's part of it. It's this, if she's been through sicknesses, she's been through some horrible things, and this kind of makes her feel better. It just makes her feel better.
All the rich and famous people are suffering too,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can we go on to things that just get out of control? We've just been talking about emotions, but
Sure.
evolution has a lot to say also about places where we can't control our behavior.
Okay.
The first one we all know about is eating, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
everybody says, "Oh, I'm just going to stop eating," right? I'll just lose a couple of pounds this week and a couple of pounds next week and a couple of pounds a week after. I'll just stop eating, right? That doesn't work, right? And it's because we've been shaped by life on the African savanna to make really, really sure that we don't starve.
Right.
And the risk of getting too heavy has never been much of a risk, even though it does make you run slower and the like. So the whole thing is weighted against us in the first place. Plus, we have created a society that has everything we've always wanted. I mean, in a lot of hunter-gatherer tribes, they spend a high proportion of their time looking for honey.
Right.
Hey, you can go into a 7-Eleven, get a Snickers bars anytime.
Yeah.
And it's even better than straight old honey, I think.
Right.
So now we need to come to eating disorders. It gets out of control, first of all, eating too much. And, most of us, kind of too heavy. But what about people who have anorexia and bulimia? And who try to eat and they can't stop it, and then they try to stop it, and that has been such a puzzle. But I think it's explainable actually by what natural selection has shaped. Because if you decide to just stop eating for a few days, what inevitably happens after a few days is you find yourself staring at a half gallon of ice cream that's empty, and you can hardly guess how it got empty, or a whole loaf of bread that's just gone, and then you feel so bad about yourself. And so stuffed, you decide, oh my God, I really am out of control. I've got to try harder.
Right.
So this is what I'm into now, which is control theory, cybernetics, because natural selection has shaped these mechanisms to regulate all kinds of things. But when they're exposed to modern cues, like Snickers bars and whole loaves of white bread and stuff like that, they don't work very well. And the harder we try to fight some of our drives, the more likely it is that they will just spiral right out of control. Certain people can really control their eating and they become anorexic. Most of us, if we try to not eat for a few days, we find ourselves gorging. And most people after that kind of give up on that kind of dieting very wisely. But I think this also has practical implications because people imagine that they can just stop eating and control it all, but helping them realize that what they're doing is setting off the famine response, which is pre-programmed to force them to eat. And second of all, that kind of starvation dieting ratchets up your basal weight point.
Your basal weight point? What is that?
You gain a little weight.
Oh, okay, got it.
Because what your body has encountered is erratic food supplies. And if your food supplies are erratic, and this is one explanation people have for why people in underprivileged areas in our country tend to have more obesity than others. Because if you're not confident that you're going to have food whenever you need it, and eating regular schedule, then the whole system is set to put on extra pounds because you don't know for sure that you'll have a secure meal.
Right. Plus you have environmental factors of food deserts, and you have, it's very difficult to get quality food, but to your point, the craving is for fatty carbohydrate foods, oil, butter. If you don't cook with a lot of butter, it's because you don't know how good it is. Because butter is literally the thing that makes the food that you love in restaurants is butter. So just FYI. But we've evolved for that, right? That's an evolutionary repercussion.
So here's how naive I was, Mike. I talked to one of my anthropologist friends when he came back from his work in South America. And I said, well, I'll bet the people you work with would never consider eating a Big Mac. And he paused and he looked at me and said, if I brought a Big Mac to the field, they would kill me immediately to get it.
Right. Exactly. Because it's what people crave.
That's salt and sugar.
Yeah. And to your point, and that's, again, that was an important part of our evolutionary biology, right? We needed fats, we needed sugars, we needed carbohydrates. And then, we hit this modern society and we're not running, we're not hunting, we're not gathering, we're not doing all the things that also burn those things off. So
and no long winter.
No longer, right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That too,
Winter
yeah.
isn't coming.
Well, I
So
mean,
go ahead.
I was to say I'm at the point where I'm taking Snicker bars and wrapping them in bread. So so that's a win for me. But what I was God, I forgot my question because I wanted to make
you
that
can
joke.
go to the Minnesota State Fair, Luis.
Yeah.
And they usually have
Deep fried Snickers.
Snicker bars wrapped in bacon.
Yeah.
Bacon. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, well, here's the difference, right? Is let me ask you this. If we were to take, because I think a big culprit of this, because this is something that I struggle with. It's something that I've struggled with my whole life. This idea of gaining, losing, gaining, losing, gaining, losing, depending on my activity. Like when I was a young football player, it was really easy to maintain, or easier.
Right.
And then I stopped playing football. And then I moved to New York City, and then I started walking and taking the train everywhere. And, I was a young man dating lifestyle. So, my habits would change, and then move out to Los Angeles. And it's there's no subway system here. There's none of that stuff, but I do
society.
try to play golf every now and then. But there is this aspect that they make these things, from what I've read, a Big Mac and a fries and a Coke are just as addictive as a needle of heroin, and just as easy to get.
So what a perfect transition, Luis, to what we
Yeah.
should talk about next, which
Perfect.
is drug use and alcohol use.
Yeah.
Because these are classic disorders of mismatch with our environment. I mean, there's never been selection against using heroin. There's been very little selection against using alcohol. And, those drugs essentially hijack our motivation systems. They go right to the brain centers that regulate learning. And every time you take a dose, your brain says, whoa, you just had 6 grandchildren. Let's do that again. It's such a super high.
Pleasure centers, right?
And from a lot of people, but not everybody, interestingly, for a lot of people, once they go down that road, they never come back, because their life gets taken over. I've been talking in recent lectures about how one of the really big causes of drug use is people's belief in free will. They believe they can just stop. But we don't actually control our behavior all that well. Just like you, Luis, in New York versus LA. If you're in New York and you're walking all the time, and on the subway and stuff, it's a whole different metabolism,
Right.
than sitting in a car in LA. And likewise, if you got whiskey and beer just in the corner store and you can get it any time, that's what's different now. For alcohol, it's ready supplies of potent stuff. For other drugs, increasingly, it's reliable supplies of pure drugs and means of administration. It's the needles and the cigarette papers that really make it a potent experience and the like.
The paraphernalia.
I don't know what we do about this. Everybody wants some answer, but geez, it's such a huge problem.
It's hard because, I come from a very, I consider myself a lefty libertarian, where I believe in personal freedom, but I also believe in social safety nets. So that's kind of where I land on that political spectrum. But that being said, I believe in people's rights to free will and to choice. And I don't think, blocking people from, creating environments where we decide what other people should and should not do is the right answer. But to your point, we have some serious problems, right? We have some serious problems in society. And it reminds me of,
Johann Hari.
Johann Hari, who wrote a book called Chasing the Scream. And his book was about depression and drug addiction.
Well, there's 2. His second one is about depression and anxiety. His first one's but they kind of all mingle together. But he talks about how addiction is a lack of happiness. Basically, you don't have the happiness
people
you
who
need.
don't have other sources of pleasure in their life are more vulnerable to addiction, because that's a way they can get some of those satisfactions. And here's an interesting thing about all of this, though. Not everybody is genetically vulnerable to addiction.
Mm.
They're huge genetic influences, and projects I've been really encouraging other scientists to do are to try to ask, so in the natural environment, what are these people like who are and are not vulnerable to addiction? And you could do the study, by taking kids of parents who are drug users and not drug users and seeing how they pick raspberries and strawberries. And I'm betting that their behavior would be different. But this hasn't been done.
That's an interesting theory. Yeah, you're saying like the child's behavior would reflect the addictive personality of the parent.
And it also means that we shouldn't be talking about bad genes. These aren't bad mutation genes that only abnormal people have. They probably give advantages, or at least they lead to different strategies for foraging, and that's something worthwhile.
Oh, right. So regardless, every mutation, every distinction has potential for positive environmental outcomes, but it just depends on the environment ultimately.
Right. That's right.
Oh man, that gets into a deep question about different segments of society.
Oh, I thought you were about to be like, well, we don't have free will. I thought you were about to like go down the free will rabbit hole.
No. I was gonna say this idea of passing on addiction. Can you pass on? I've heard this idea of passing on pain, passing on fear of oppression. And how that might affect, instead of it picking berries, maybe that might affect what kind of jobs you apply for, or how you apply yourself in a scholastic atmosphere. Like, does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah. I think it definitely applies. Yeah. But it's for example, a lot of people will talk about the Native American community and how they're predisposed to alcoholism. And I'm like, but on the other hand, you stole all their land and you gave them crap, like maybe that's why they're predisposed to alcoholism.
And this is the crux of this entire conversation, right? Because the Native Americans were living in tribal societies that their brains were evolved for. How many hundreds of years ago? Less than 500 years ago, right? So those folks who went immediately from having one world and then being transported into this modern world and have enormous cases of alcohol addiction, right? Have enormous amount of problems with gambling addiction, has nothing to do with their race. It has everything to do with the movement of that brain from one environment to a completely and polar opposite environment, right? Am I close here, Randy?
Yeah. The data on alcohol in Native Americans is quite difficult to figure out. I heard a wonderful talk one time looking for genetic differences and personality differences that influenced that. And the only thing that was different between the Native Americans and other people in this country is that the Native Americans didn't fall asleep when they got drunk. So they could keep drinking. So I'm 20 years out of date on this, so I really shouldn't be talking about it at all. But I can talk about the Pima Indians in Arizona, where my university is. And many of them have diabetes, almost half of them. We're getting away from drug abuse here, back to diabetes and metabolic disease for a second. And, people keep looking, do they have special kind of genes that are shaped because maybe they starved before? But if you go south of the border in Mexico, the obesity goes away dramatically. So it's strongly environmentally determined, which doesn't mean that genes are irrelevant. But saying that one cultural group has bad genes that make them especially vulnerable is way too simple.
Right. But it does make a lot of sense, this idea of, coming from, you have, again, like I want to go back real quick to the tribal societies, because in a tribal society, you're constantly thinking about how to survive, right? It's all about survival. And, you're trying to figure out how to survive in groups. And then, fast forward to the modern era, and everything's just bigger. Everything's just so much more intense, so much more vast, coming at you so much faster. The information, the technology, it's all being, our processing centers don't seem to be developed for this. Is that accurate, or do you think it's just a matter of the brain
it's not
catching
just the
up?
amount of information per minute, that's coming at us. It's the kind of information. And now we can talk about modern media and podcasts and Twitter and the like. As I'm sure you all are acutely aware, if you say something like moderate, like, hey, depression's going up a little bit for reasons I'm not sure. I mean, that's my shtick. I mean, that does not get you lots of followers. Right. If you say there's an epidemic, people who say extreme things get lots of attention.
That's right.
And it's tempting to do that. And a lot of people succeed at doing that and getting a lot of attention and money.
5 reasons your phone is killing you. Right?
I've got 5 reasons why your, bad feelings are usually normal but useless, but I don't have a solution to make them all better real quick.
It almost sounds like, just pessimistically saying, it almost sounds like the solution is just a reset, like an asteroid, a couple of you survive and we just start again. And hopefully it's with different emphasis on the aspects of life when it comes to society. Because the one thing, just going back to the Japanese culture, like the kids in school, they clean the hallway, they clean the school every day for, I think it's 20 or 30 minutes a day. They clean their classrooms, they mop the hallways, they have an appreciation for the institution that they're in. And I cannot imagine having any possible clear way of instituting that kind of cultural
so many
change
of us living in modern American cities. Imagine we know what it's like living on other places. Here's again how naive I was. I went to Japan, and part of why I was there was to do a small study on mood and suicide. And one of the questions that I asked all of the students that I interviewed as a part of this project was my favorite question for understanding somebody's personality. My favorite question is, how are you different from other people?
Ooh.
You guys want to answer that? It's pretty revealing.
Man, yeah, gosh.
You want to go first, Luis?
Well, how am I different than other people? No one's ever asked me that question. I'd really have to think about it.
Just say whatever comes to your mind.
I don't think I'm that different. As I'm older, I've realized that I think a lot of the things I think a lot of the anxieties that I have, I think a lot of the tics that I display that I don't even know that I do, a whole bunch of other people do. We're all essentially one race, one human race, and I think we're so similar in so many ways that we don't even realize. Like, I'm sure all of us here have sat in front of a mirror after taking a shower and made some silly faces or combed your hair in a weird way, did a stupid voice, just these intimate moments that no one's ever going to see. But I have a feeling a lot of people do weird stuff like that. We're weird. We are a weird species. And
but everybody wants to be somebody in this society.
Agree. Well, I'm an actor, right? So
who lives in LA? Who has a podcast?
Who's got a podcast, and I talk about UFOs, and I do comedy, and I'm a weirdo. But I don't mind being a weirdo. Like, I've let go of the thing that I've really let go of, especially in the last 2 years, is this care of what people think about what I do, or the decisions I've made to do things. I can't say I'm happy. I don't have the financial freedoms I wish I had, but everything else outside of the financial freedoms, I am pretty content with.
So I shouldn't really. It's a bit of a personal question to suddenly put on people in a podcast. So let me not ask you guys to necessarily say more about that. But I can tell you what every single person in Japan said to me, which completely set me back. To a person, they said, I am not different. I am like other people. No, I am like other people. I am not different. I am the same as other people. And it just completely opened my eyes to how naive I was and how self-centered and individualistic we are in the US, and how hard it is to understand other cultures and how they work and what life is like there and the like.
That's
So
such
that was
an
my
important
answer.
point. That was your answer.
Am I a
Liz.
psychopath? I felt
No, you're
like I was
Japanese.
You're
felt
turning
like I'm
Japanese. You're turning
I think you're an
Japanese. I
American,
really
you know?
think so.
You think I'm an American? Well, I felt like I had a little bit of my answer was sprinkled with that Japanese, but then again, I'm an actor. Like I also love attention. Like I'm a chauvinist in that way. I do love
A showman in that way.
Yeah, however you want to put it, however you'd like to word it.
So
but,
Mike was asking, what can we do with this knowledge? Are there any generalizations we can come to? And I think one for me is, I mean, it does give you a deeper sympathy for kind of the human plight. Because we're all kind of striving for stuff and not able to get what we want and the like. And it also, I think, helps us to kind of temper our desires. And there's so many different therapies these days. Mindfulness is one of the best ones, where people quit just desperately trying to get stuff or accomplish things, and instead pull back and just let those emotions and those ideas run instead of letting them take them over. Again, gross simplification, but I think, and this is not a new idea, right? I mean, religious traditions for thousands of years have encouraged people to, not just go for stuff, but to pull back and try to do what's right and to try to, not just be striving all the time.
Randy, I almost wonder, you think about Zen Buddhism and you think about like Kriya Yoga and all of these different traditions throughout history. And it seems to me that these were attempts by older and ancient civilizations to cope with the evolutionary brain of modern humans in this new world where we are writing and we are worshiping together, and we are coming together as communities, and we're trading money and we're trading resources, and we're living in this whole new way, this whole new paradigm. It seems like there are some of these ancient traditions that are very similar to what you're suggesting now when it comes to mindfulness and, kind of pulling back.
If you haven't had him on the show yet, you should get Robert Wright. Robert Wright is a brilliant writer, philosopher, and scholar, and he has a book called Why Buddhism is True. And in contrast to a lot of other people, he actually knows what he's talking about. And there's another book I like very much called How to Want What You Have. Isn't that the nicest book title ever?
It is. Yeah. I would imagine the repercussions of
my
that.
My mother would always tell me, how does it feel to want? She would always ask me that. Anytime I would ask her for something, I'd be like, Mom, can I get this new, Walkman or whatever? She'd be like, yeah, well, how does it feel to want? And then she'd walk away.
That's a wise mother.
Yeah. And I always
your mother was your Zen master.
She really was, and she didn't even realize it.
That's fascinating.
But the idea that we can just turn off our desires doesn't work.
Yeah, man.
This idea we can all get into some specialized Zen state. No, I mean, we are. The desires keep coming, and the Buddhists at least recognize that. But they too want to offer solutions that really aren't accessible, I don't think, to most people.
Randy, do you think there's a technological way to shut off these wants? Like, do you think technology will catch up to be able to create these switches?
Well, how about drugs? I mean, we use drugs now to turn the gain on the system up, right? Take some cocaine, then you want sex, you want more cocaine, you want all kinds of stuff, right? Even smoking weed, you're probably going to go through a whole bag of Oreos, right?
Absolutely.
It sets off desires, right? But what about taking drugs that dampen desires? But there's a problem with those drugs. Nobody wants to take them.
But isn't that? But I guess depressants don't do that.
Valium puts you to sleep, right?
That's it's more like drugs that are used for schizophrenia and block dopamine.
Oh,
Well, what about
it's-
past a pharmaceutical standpoint? What about, in the genome? Like, are we able to, this idea of shutting off the propensity to have an addictive personality? Like if you come from a family of addicts, and do you think one day we'll have the ability to say, hey, you know what? Before this kid's born, this next generation's born, let's fix this addiction.
The person who's
aspect
leading the charge for our country is Nora Volkow, and she's the head of the National Institute of Drug Addiction, or that kind of research for the National Institutes of Health. And she and her scientists are giving grants to people trying to figure out what's going on in the brain so that we might be able to preferably use drugs to make people not want to use drugs. And I think they will succeed. Because not everybody gets addicted. I mean, some people can take heroin and enjoy it and then stop it, and other people take it once and it's the end of their lives. So understanding how those two kinds of people are different may well give us opportunities to help people dramatically. In the meanwhile, helping kids, the DARE program, trying to scare people off, that doesn't work. But helping kids to realize that you might well lose control of your whole life. You think you can control it. Look at me and tell stories about people who couldn't control it, so that they know. I don't think the evidence is that doesn't help all that much, because kids don't believe old people.
that's so true.
Probably not for children, no.
What's that, Kirsten?
No, I used to take my foster boys to NA. So for adults, it works because those stories are terrifying.
Right. Chris and I, we had 7 foster kids over a 3-year period.
Wow.
When we were in our early 20s. And some of them were going through addiction issues, but most of them just had really crappy parents.
And just being dumb teenagers.
Yeah, but we would take them to like NA and AA, and hearing some of the stories in NA and AA are enough to scare the crap out of you, but not these kids. Didn't scare them.
They didn't care.
They'd heard it all and lived it,
Yeah, it's wild.
So we got to stop in just a minute, but I don't, there are all these problems in the world. Can we just pause a second and say, there's a whole lot of people who live pretty stable lives, and they enjoy their lives. And the average person says they're either very satisfied or moderately satisfied with their life as it's going right now. And there's a lot of people who love their partners and they're secure in their relationship and they're doing work that they like. And so long as the society can hold itself together and we don't get into warfare and crap, it's amazing capable of this. I mean, imagine, 300 chimpanzees on a 747. They are not going to be sitting there, and they're certainly not going to wear their masks no matter what anybody tells them. So, I mean, it's astounding the capabilities our species has for cooperation and for relationships and for morality. But that would have to be for another conversation another time.
Man, we're definitely gonna have you back, Randy. I really appreciate your perspective on that. I'm also an optimist, but I think you can be that if you're comparing the possibilities, right? If you're comparing the differences between people have this like extraordinary. Sometimes people have this extraordinary nostalgia for pre-modern society, and they think like it was just grand and glorious living on the savannah. That shit was hard. That was hard living.
That's right.
Especially
and thanks for putting up the book ad there. Goodreasons.info is where you go to get information about it. And on my website, you'll find dozens of papers about this stuff if you want to read the heavy-duty science stuff.
All right. So you can get the book at, is it goodreasons.info? Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. You can also go to randolphness.com and there's a link for it there as well.
And then you're also on Twitter, I believe, at Randolph Ness, I think.
Randolph Nesse, right?
Yep, Randolph Nesse. That's right. It's like going to the soda shoppy.
That's right. It's been fun talking to you guys. Congratulations on a very interesting show. I've enjoyed it. And maybe we can talk another again sometime.
That sounds lovely, Randy. We really appreciate your time, brother. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Randy, what a calm
Yeah.
He's so calm.
So calm.
So
Calming sense and everything. Like
he took my energy and pulled it down a little bit. I was like, okay, I need to
well,
speak
he was
more.
saying my volume was low. I'm like, I'm sorry, Randy. But you're lulling me, baby. I love it. It's in a very good way. I mean, he's got some great questions, and I love that he doesn't have any answers for any of this. and he's like, I'm not studied on this, but these are my theories, and
dude,
as
the
a psychiatrist, this is
humility.
how I feel.
Yeah,
it's
I really appreciate
good.
that. A very opposite of our conversation last night, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, way opposite. Way opposite. A lot less tension.
Refreshing.
A lot less tension, that is for sure.
Yeah, a lot less knowing the truth and the facts and being the bearer of the wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. Man, you know what? We forgot to remind people about our links, about subscribing.
Oh, do you want to should we reset the room?
We should. I mean, it's the top of the hour.
Should we? Maybe we should reset the room. I would be happy to.
And we've also got new guests that we got to bring.
We have a whole new
poll.
panel.
We got a poll we got to read.
We got a poll. We got a whole new panel coming in. You guys do not go anywhere. If you haven't already, and you want to control your own destiny, and you do believe in free will, click that subscribe button. Click the bell so you know whenever we go live. We are here 5 nights a week, 3 days on the Unidentified Celebrity Review, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and 2 days a week here at the Singularity Lab, Tuesday and Thursday. We've got the Big Phone Home coming up. If you want transparency from your government on UAPs and you believe that the American people deserve the truth, we deserve public hearings, we deserve not to be told we're crazy for having these conversations, you might want to join us. I want to join the Big Phone Home. If you haven't gone to thebigphonehome.com, make sure you open that browser window, hit thebigphonehome.com. Look at that. Oh, look at that. So we've got the September 4th, 5th, and 6th, Labor Day weekend. We're going to be going, it says 9 to 5 PST, but we're actually going to be extending those hours a bit. Or no, is that right? What is that?
Yep.
4th to 6th, yeah. So we'll be extending those hours a little bit because we've got so many guests. It's absolutely insane. 3 days right there. You can see day 1, day 2, day 3, and you get a reminder on each of those once you go to the website. And we've got Avi Loeb, we've got Lou Elizondo, we've got Danny Sheehan, we've got Hal Puthoff, we've got Richard Hoffman, we got Jazz Shaw, we got John Greenwald, we've got, who else we got, Lou? Yeah, help me out, bro.
Jason McClellan, we've got Jay from Project Unity, Graham Rendell's going to be here. Ryan Sprague, Nick Pope, and we're going to also see who else we can try and get in. The last time we had a Big Phone Home, we had a whole bunch of guests.
I spoke with Ralph Blumenthal today. He's in.
We got Ralph Blumenthal.
Yeah.
So Ralph Blumenthal
from the New York Times. Yeah.
Also, guys, if you haven't already, check out this petition. It takes a second to fill it out, and it's a really easy way to do the Big Phone Home right now. It'll send a petition right to the proper committees and subcommittees within Congress. And then if you want to go deeper, you can find your congressman, your local state representative. And then you can make a phone call with our bullet points here, which are really great. Check this out. So these are all of our bullet points that you can use when you make a phone call of things you could talk about. You can write an email. You could also use these email templates. One of them the first one here written by John Greenwald Jr. It'll probably be the one I'll be using a lot, but you could also print these out. You can send them as snail mail, and you could also email them. And then of course we've got tweets, and they're going to be, I've written out a couple of more Twitter templates. Those will be coming
Tweeters
in the next couple of days. So yeah, man, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a really cool event.
Don D wants to know if we'll be premiering the 23-minute video.
Watch all 3 days. You never know, it might pop up. I'll tell you this: we might definitely have a 23-minute video of Lou Elizondo's neck. So. There's also that video floating around somewhere.
Oh dear. What an amazing panel we have behind the scenes right now who are going to be joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, you know him and love him. He spends every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with us. First 5 minutes of every show, prepping us for the coming of Luis. Ladies and gentlemen, science technology enthusiast and researcher, his YouTube channel, Rather Be Squidding. Rather, how are you?
Hey guys, doing well. That was a really interesting first hour there.
Yeah, I'm
Right?
excited to break it down with you. I'm excited to get you guys' feedback on it.
Well, I was scared there for a second. Rather was out of focus. I was like, oh no, but he's look at him.
Oh,
look
way
at
in
him go.
focus now.
He's extra
Dude.
in focus.
He is.
He's really looking good. Looking
Stunning,
good, Rather.
stunning
Oh,
HD quality.
thanks, guys.
Look at the love for Rather. Somebody found the neck. Oh, Daniel found it. Daniel found the neck. All right. Well, you should be. Is that who's coming up next? By the way,
Master Hunter in LA, Daniel Miller's found Lou Elizondo's neck. Daniel is a lover of space and science. He's also a political junkie, trying to bridge the gap between the UAP phenomenon and our governmental disclosure. How the heck are you, Daniel?
Just great. The neck is somewhere safe.
You had okay, so you've stored the neck somewhere
it's
safe.
no longer at a Best Western in Rancho Cucamonga.
Exactly.
Oh,
Kick and scream in it.
by the way, have we figured out how to do multiple lines yet? Have you talked to Greenwald?
Actually, Greenwald and I are meeting on Friday.
Excellent.
Yes.
Oh my god, because I cannot wait to take.
We don't know how to do that, but maybe we'll take some phone calls here in a little bit. Stick around.
Stick
We'll give you the
around.
number. All right. Mystery Goat identifies as a rather sexual.
Nice.
Oh man, damn it.
Yes.
Where's Randy Nesse when we need him?
To explain the evolutionary psychiatric propensity to identify as a rather sexual.
Yeah.
I think if you discover
Oh,
rather,
dear.
it's inevitable.
Yeah.
Indeed. All right. Sorry.
I think this is my uncomfortable laugh.
That is definitely your uncomfortable laugh. You know who is it? The mother in that 70s show? What's it? Kitty?
Yeah, Kitty.
Yeah, you have that
Yep.
like uncomfortable laugh. Kitty Foreman.
She's my alter ego.
It's a good alter ego.
We have another science and technology enthusiast, currently a staff software engineer at Google. Also worked with LucasArts, Silicon Graphics, and Apple. Co-invented and received a patent for iPhoto. Welcome, Aaron Disario. How are you, brother?
Thank you. I'm well. So you found the neck, but do you know where Stephen Greer's flare is?
Oh, burn.
I don't even know what a flare is. Will somebody please tell me? The last flare I heard of was like a breakdancing move where you kick your legs over your head. What the freak is a flare?
Okay. First of all, you've obviously never worked at TGI
Fridays.
Fridays because if you have worked at TGI Fridays, you would know that you wear suspenders and you have all these different buttons on and you're wearing your flare.
And
that's
fun hats.
And fun hats. I used to, when I had...
Also,
when I
if you've
worked
seen
at
that
TGI Fridays-
movie Office Space.
Also, yes.
But I think all that's changed. I haven't been to a Fridays in a while. I think they've rebranded.
Yeah. What was the movie? What was the ridiculous...
Waiting?
Waiting, yes. And the goat. You guys remember the goat?
I as someone who worked in restaurants for 10 years, I have never seen it, and I feel like it'd be too traumatizing to watch it. You can't watch it.
Oh yeah, no, you should watch it. Well, here's the best thing I've seen about the service industry is the new show on HBO, The White Lotus.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
I
great.
loved it.
Yeah.
So good.
Manager guy's
So good.
So good. It's really good. So I was not prepared today, and I didn't create a poll, but I believe maybe Artemis. Did Artemis create a poll?
Somebody
create
did.
a poll. Let's bring
Fantastic. Let's bring Artemis in here. And
Hey, guys.
Artemis, how are you?
Hello.
Good. How are you guys?
Good. It's great to see you. You're looking like pleasant today. I know
There's a nice breeze.
It's got a nice breeze. Like, do you have a little
Beyonce
fan?
light.
Is there?
I have a fan on.
Is there a fan there?
She's got
a little fan.
She's got a team of people with one of those movie set fans, just
I know.
blowing wind in her face so she can look like a Mariah Carey music video. I love it.
I was thinking it's like the American Idol set. You know, they got a fan below the microphone blowing up.
Or just a bunch of fans worshiping her and just like going up and down and creating, Artemis, Would you like
Yeah.
to share the poll we had today?
Mm-hmm.
What do we
Yes.
got?
So I just kind of made one on the fly. But
Sweet.
yeah. So I said, where is our brain headed? And the answers were 32% said mental health issues will increase.
Oh.
16% said we will develop telepathic powers.
Ooh. How many percent was that?
16.
16. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
The optimist.
Yeah. And these guys are optimists too. 6% said nothing. We won't continue to evolve.
Damn. Just no further evolution.
Just that's
Okay.
it. That's just done.
No further evolution.
And 46% said gradual evolution, slow but steady.
All right. All right.
So a lot of people are boring.
Yeah.
And they just think it'll be slow and steady, which is, probably the way it's going to go. So.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's interesting, and so I want to kind of hit the entire group with this question because it was a fascinating conversation with Dr. Randy Ness,
so
and
good.
and so this idea that we have all of these emotions, and so many of them are normal, but maybe don't serve us, and are remnants of our evolutionary and biological past. How what do you guys think? How true is that? Maybe start with Aaron.
So I noticed, like Lou did, that he didn't really have any answers, and that's fair. Hopefully, the knowledge that he's giving us will help us come up with our own answers. If you're aware of why things happen, you might be able to use that.
This is the area. This is the hour that we speculate, Aaron. So feel free.
Though I do wonder, if that's the case, then where are the genes taking us? Are they taking us toward more anxiety and depression, or are they taking us away from that? And how much of that is genes, and how much of that is kind of societal pressure? Our anxiety motivates us, and that's what causes capitalism to work to a large extent. But you also need a safety net so that you don't feel like at any moment you could have the rug pulled out from underneath you, and that's what causes the anxiety. So there's probably a balance there somewhere where you have to have enough anxiety to contribute to society, but not so much that it cripples you and makes you unhappy.
I agree. I'm always an outcast in most political conversations because I believe in social safety nets and I believe in capitalism. And people are like, well, and it's like
their brains melt when they hear that.
I'm like, yeah,
I don't understand what's wrong with that. That seems like a perfectly natural solution.
It isn't. I mean, am I?
Well,
I
here's
don't.
the thing. I always find it funny when you get into conversations about capitalism and how much people hate it, and then when you ask that person, well, point to another example that's worked better. Go for it. They can't. But then again, I always ask the people who are pro walls, well, go ahead and point to a wall that has worked. That was built and worked. You can't.
Didn't the Great Wall of China keep the Mongols out for centuries?
For centuries, but look at it now.
Okay, you're right. I mean,
I think there's a difference. The Great Wall
you can let anything slip into. Sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
I was going to say the Great Wall was to hold out an invading army. We're talking about a wall on our border to prevent a couple of people from crossing. They're very different sorts of walls.
Well, it's not a couple of people. It's more than a couple. There's thousands and thousands. I mean, it's look, I mean, again, like I come from a family of immigrants. We were lucky because the immigration policy for Cubans is a lot different than it is for South Americans, or at least it used to be. All you had to do was get your foot on dry land and you're in. That is not the case with Salvadorians, Mexicans, Guatemalans. Like that's just not the case, and it was an unfair system for a long time. But there was still a waiting period, and like my mother, she's like, it's not fair. Like people have waited a decade to get to legally be here, and they've gone through this process, and now all of these folks get to circumvent the process.
What makes us better than all those other people? Just because we're born here, we were lucky to be born here, so we get
No, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. It's just the idea of the immigrants that had to sacrifice a lot, that got here and made it here and have been established here, had to go through the process. And they see like a lot of folks that are circumventing that process, and they feel like it's not fair. It's not. It's a fairness issue.
It's also not without hardship, right? Like it's pretty damn difficult for them to get here. I mean, they might be circumventing one thing, but
that's
absolutely. But
anyway,
also,
I don't think we want to divert off. The thing,
but the thing I could always also tell my mother is like, if it was your uncle or your aunt that just got off a boat from Cuba, you would want them here. So, it's why are you not applying that to strangers? That's where we
come back to this conversation, right? I think that's what this biological, as hunter-gatherers, as tribal societies, we were about our tribe, right? We were supportive. There was very little immigration going on between tribes, right? Even the Native Americans were what is considered an erratic retaliator. They didn't go to war, but they certainly didn't commingle. Well, they didn't become parts of each other's tribes. It goes
back to Japan. Nobody's immigrating to Japan.
Is that true? I thought.
Well, I mean, not to a point where it creates a whole nother social structure within the country.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. No, it's minor for sure.
It's an island. It's hard to get there.
Yeah.
I don't know what their immigration policies are.
It's hard to get here too, but people find a way.
Patrick Wilson? Who's Patrick Wilson?
Oh, Patrick.
It says why.
That's an actor.
Mystery Ghost says, why is Patrick Wilson?
I have a feeling this is a Daniel Miller comment.
It might be. God, it's like we're talking about deep immigration policy, and it's like Patrick Wilson.
I was trying to lighten the mood up a little.
Do the conversation. Yeah.
So what do you think, Daniel, on this topic? Like as human, like that's the thing that's so weird. Like we went from tribal society to this modern civilization, and we did it very quickly. Our tools evolved, our technology evolved, our food systems evolved, our infrastructure evolved. All of these things evolved, but the only thing that hasn't evolved is our brain. Yet here we are trying to cope with this. What do you think, Daniel? Is this something that we're going to get a handle on? Are our brains going to keep evolving? Do we need a technological solution or a mindfulness? What are your thoughts?
I think mindfulness is so it's interesting this conversation came here because my girlfriend she runs a social media and marketing for a couples therapist that approaches it from a psychobiological approach. So I've talked to her about this stuff kind of in the past a bit, and it's really interesting how his kind of viewpoint upon this, and I'm not a student of his or anything, just based on my girlfriend, so I could be misquoting this, but kind of how our brains are built for war, and we're never going to really change that right now, because this is the part of our brain that is before the reasoning comes in. This is our limbic system. This is where our instincts kick in. So it's not about changing that per se, but just about having the awareness to manage it, or if you realize you're at a place where you can't manage anymore, then maybe take a break. So I don't know if we're ever going to, maybe in the far future, I don't know, who knows, we talk about gene editing or, how Neuralink stuff can affect the brain, who knows? But for now, this seems to me to be part of the brain that I don't know if we can just change it. But it's here, and 10,000 years on a biological scale and time scale is very, very, very small. Like the brains we have now versus those hunter-gatherers 10,000 years ago, same brain. So it's kind of crazy. Sometimes you think about it and you're like, it's amazing that we haven't all just
killed each other.
This planet's not nuclear winter yet. It's kind of crazy when you think about how crazy we all can be, and how so many countries are presses away from nuclear fallout.
The aliens are turning all the nuclear weapons off. So
exactly. There's a reason why, right? So Yeah, I think it's such a fascinating conversation, and I have a lot of opinions about it. In terms of depression too, I do wonder, a combination of, I wonder how much it has somewhat, I think it has changed, but also how much of it maybe just wasn't maybe as acceptable in society to talk about it. Because you can read some accounts of the way some people were in history and think, oh, that guy had a severe depression issue, but that really wasn't talked about back then. Or that guy clearly had OCD, but it was 1850 and they called it something else, right? So but also I think given our society, I do wonder in terms of the internet and social media and how it has plenty of pluses and bonuses to society, but I'm sure constantly seeing how, the highlight reel of everyone's life in your face all the time, and the constant comparing or contrasting, or just how the daily effect, the way we interact with technology these days, how that probably can only intensify those propensity we have to kind of run into those issues, because they're not the most mentally healthy habits.
No,
Right.
they definitely have tremendous
they served
impact.
a purpose historically. Sorry, go ahead, Artemis.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that for sure social media has a tremendous impact on mental health, and especially of the youth who's so their minds are still growing, and they're absorbing a lot of what's on the internet, and a lot of comparing themselves, and a lot of like competition. It's a lot of unhealthy, I think, especially for the younger generation, I feel kind of lucky that I was like on the cusp of it. I had it, but it wasn't such a big part of life in high school. But yeah, it existed, but the way it is now with teenagers, like that's all they're on is social media.
Right.
So it definitely has an impact in the way that they use technology, the way that they're going to develop, and the way that they're going to even think of themselves.
Yeah,
And
it's how they see themselves.
it's how they see themselves. It's so distorted in this world, I think. It's really sad.
I wanted to give a shout out to Matthew Riot for the $4.99 donations. You guys are boomers when it comes to celebs. Appreciate that. And then we got a super sticker here from Akashi Chris. Thank you so much for that. Did you guys notice there is a comment here from Jazz Shaw that he saw another Tic Tac today?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, he's processing the video.
What in the world? What? Jazz, let me know if you want to hop in here and tell us about it.
Yeah,
Jeez Louise.
seriously.
What are your thoughts on this conversation?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that it's pretty clear that the disconnect between the mind and society is kind of at an all-time high. I thought, Randy Ness's take on it was very interesting. Although he didn't have any answers, I thought the evolutionary psychology was a very interesting aspect. And, knowledge, I think, is kind of the first step to bridging that gap.
Right.
And I think that Daniel kind of hit it on the head there, where I think we maybe have two paths we could go down. And one is the epigenetics and, altering our mind and our genetics based on this evolutionary knowledge to solve some of these issues, which is exciting, maybe a little bit scary. And I think maybe the other alternative would be the mindfulness route, which probably might be the better course, but probably not the more popular. And I don't see us going down that route. I see us going down the, altering our brain.
Do you think we're headed down that road as opposed to the mindfulness road? Can we do both?
We probably can. I think mindfulness is harder to do, right? So when you're looking at the public for solutions to their mental illnesses and issues, I think that the issue of taking a pill that will solve their evolutionary issues is probably a lot more appealing, but maybe not.
Just try teaching mindfulness in schools, right? You'll never get away with that.
We'd never get away with teaching mindfulness in schools?
I think in public schools, you'd have difficulty getting like a mindfulness class.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, but generally these things are always a problem with marketing and political polarization. So if you can find a way to market these things to both sides of the political aisle, I think that's where you do. So Chris and I were talking about this other day about the vaccine, right? So people are always, so many people are saying, oh, and this is an important piece of the puzzle too about this evolutionary biology thing, because remember when Randy Ness was saying how when you hear that jaguar in the bush, right?
Is it Randy
And
Ness or Randy Nesse?
I thought it was like Shopee, right?
I thought he was
Yeah.
teasing me when he said
Oh.
that, but I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know.
Okay.
We'll have to find out. But this idea of the, you know, the person, you know, pre-modern society who's in the bush and they hear what they think is a jaguar, the risk reward balance of running away is far greater than just standing there and being like, oops, I was wrong. Like, it's better to run
Yeah.
than take the risk of being wrong about that being a lion in the bush, right? And so I think that, you know, when you couple people's distrust of the government and you couple people's distrust of big pharma, it's not surprising how many people don't want to take a vaccine. And so I can't just sit here and, you know, look down upon those people when we're creating a culture that, you know, in a society that is saying one thing, and then we're surprised when people's primal brains react by running the other direction.
And I think you missed the third group there, in all seriousness, and that is the group that says, I'm sorry, you had the group that was take the vaccine, not take the vaccine, and I totally blanked.
Wait and see.
Aww.
Maybe are you talking about like fight, fright, or freeze? The third, like
Yeah. So that's what it was. So the people who saw the jaguar and ran away,
right?
People who saw the jaguar or thought they saw a jaguar stayed and said that they're wrong. And then the third group is the people who run away and say, I saw a jaguar, but they didn't. and in all seriousness, that is part of the problem that we're facing right now.
That's also a problem in ufology, I would say, as well.
No arguments there.
I think, you know, one of the main problems, I've heard this before, it's like size of communities where, like, evolutionary, where, you know, the groups are around 100 or so are like the things that we can best maintain order in, and when we get communities above that, it's harder to maintain relationships and everything. And I think maybe even bigger than that is the information overload problem we're having now. We're not just getting information from 100 people, we're getting information from thousands of different sources, and just it's hard to know what's true and not. It's hard to know what sources to trust regarding medical issues and very important things. You know, it's hard.
I just feel, man, I feel like there's an easy solution here. And it is.
Well, you want to reset the world, it sounds like.
No, well, let's reset the whole world. I think that's pretty easy. If I had an asteroid, I'd do it. But until that day, I mean,
I know a guy.
Yeah, I know a guy who knows a guy who can direct an asteroid here. This idea, of it's never been worse than now. You know, this disinformation has never been worse than it's ever been. It's going to lead to the crumbling of our society. I mean, I don't know. Aaron, you're a Google guy. Is anybody working on this? Like, how are we going to? And see, here's the issue: is who's going to filter it? Whose job is it going to be to determine this is valid, this is not? And that plays a really slippery slope in a free society, because in a free society, as much as people hate to admit this, you have to allow for the idiot to get on the soapbox, and that idiot can have some really extreme views, but he has the right to the soapbox. So how do we keep that aspect of our liberties, but also filter out the crazy shit? Like, how do we do that? Each
company is dealing with that differently. At Google, our primary counter to this sort of thing is information and education. We try not to censor. Instead, we would put a banner that says, you know, for the facts, please check this out instead. You know, whereas on Facebook, as far as I know, they only recently started doing that kind of thing. It's probably not all that comprehensive right now, but you know, the cat's out of the bag. They've already had 10 years of development of their platform of people sharing this misinformation. So really all we can do is affect what's going to happen going forward.
And I think that one of the most difficult challenges any of these companies have is that, you know, where we do have, there are there are facts in the world. Like there are things we can prove,
Right.
but there are many, 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 many things that we can't. I mean, even so many theories that we have in science, we're still developing science. And then we have new theories, and then those theories fall by the wayside, and then those theories fall by the wayside. So to say that, these companies have it easy, they don't. This is hard. This is hard stuff. Rather, what do you got?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to be too pessimistic saying that there's information overload is a problem, because it's also an amazing benefit to society. It's clearly a double-edged sword. And
Yeah.
It's
No more good old bar fights over simple facts that you can Google.
And maybe what society needs, just like we were talking earlier about maybe teaching mindfulness in schools, I think we need to teach the skills to ingest this information. It's not an impossible task, but it's a very hard task. And I think it's a task that you need to learn.
Yeah.
One of the thoughts I had during the conversation earlier, the last hour, was fighting polarization, right? Polarization, I think, is always going to be part of human society, because that's just how we're built. And so
is it Aaron?
Well, maybe it isn't, but it sure seems to have been throughout our entire history till now. I can't really think of a time when there hasn't been some is
it polar, or are we talking about multiple viewpoints interacting? Like, my question to you is it two? Because polarization means two.
I see. It may not always be two, but like the example I came up with was the educated and the uneducated going at each other. The educated people say, take this vaccine, it is safer than catching the disease. The uneducated people say, well, I don't know, what you're doing, and I don't trust you, so I'm not going to take this vaccine. And, so how do you move that polarization that already exists to some other aspect of life where it's unimportant, right? Where it doesn't matter if you disagree about stuff, whether the Copenhagen interpretation is right or the many worlds interpretation is right. It's not going to affect my day-to-day life.
Aaron, there are physicists who would rip each other's fucking skulls off to prove their point. Go ahead, Daniel.
Well, I will say too that I think, given the platform most of this is spreading on, which is Facebook, keep in mind they mentioned a bit ago that there were only 12 people, I think it was 12, that spread 65% of all of the vaccine misinformation on there. Yeah. So I think even if we can just maybe do a better job of not enabling those bad actors, it could go a really long way to at least, tamping down this stuff a little bit. Because if you can have 12 people make 65% of a difference, I mean, talk about an efficient use of your resources.
Exponentially the amount of people. And also, I think and sorry, I'll go to you right after this, Luis, but I just think that, we also have to remember, even though most people have, a high school education, like I only have a high school education. I did a couple years of college, but I didn't finish. I think it's important not to treat people like me like morons, right? I think part of the problem is you treat people like they're stupid, and then you give them the sanitized version of the truth. And because you don't want them to get the wrong idea. Right. And rather than fully explaining it, we give them the sanitized version, and then we wonder why they don't trust us.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, I'm also high school education only, and I'm employed at Google, right? It really doesn't matter.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Here's the thing with this, especially when it comes to this COVID conversations. There's a lot of educated people that believe there's nothing to it. And that's the scary part about it, is that there's this influx of information and that smart people are consuming, and they're coming to this conclusion, oh, well, this vaccine is not necessary, or I'm not going to take it. What I recommend, if you're on the fence about the vaccine, because my sister's a nurse, she's the head nurse at a big hospital in Florida, and she's not giving the vaccine to her kids. She's like, I don't know what that vaccine is going to do to her reproductive systems. She's only 10 years old. She's 11 years old. I'm not going to give her a vaccine that has not been tested. For me, I don't care. Like, I'm going to take the vaccine because I'm an adult and I can make that choice for myself.
Yeah.
I don't want to make that choice for her.
But the question is she willing to quarantine from society?
Yes,
or is she just going to roll the dice?
No.
What are the odds that the vaccine would cause a problem in the reproductive system? They're probably less than the odds that you would, catch the disease after getting the vaccine by far.
I've seen it online a few times. It's one of the speculations.
Right, but the point is you're asking adults to inject their kids with something that hasn't been tested yet. And that's a reasonable response to that. Now, once that drug gets approved and it's got the approving of, the pharmaceutical companies and the doctors that help develop it, and they can guarantee you, yeah, your kid will be fine in 15 years. There's not going to be any sort of repercussions from this. Then no problem at all. Until then, the kids wear masks. They wash your hands. They use mouthwashes whenever they can. Like those are the things you can do. But what I would say for those folks who are on the fence, find somebody that works in a hospital. Go and talk to them. Go talk to a frontline worker and ask them, hey, is this all full of shit? And listen to their answer. Don't listen to someone on YouTube who's wearing a stethoscope and some scrubs who you don't know. Don't listen. Find somebody
I'm not a doctor, but
don't listen to guys in ties on the internet.
It's both ways in the hospital too. Our ER nurse friend, she said that there's both opinions of the hospital, which really surprises me. But
I think, look, I've got a lot of people in my family who are in the medical industry on all sorts of levels, and not one of them has told me, don't wear the mask, don't get your vaccine. All of them have said, get your mask, get the vaccine.
All of the medical people I know.
I think there's a lot more sensibilities in these hospitals, especially with nurses. Nurses see it. They're dealing with it firsthand. Go talk to one nurse, but try and talk to 5 or 6.
Yeah, talk to a few.
And then go talk to a pediatrician. Go talk to your local physician, your physician. And
talk to a medical professional,
someone who's got a degree in medicine. I cannot understand how we're spitting. Like, it kills me. There are people coming in from this country just to get the vaccine. Like third world countries would kill for this medicine, and we're letting it rot in a cooler. Some of us.
That's the thing that makes me really sad is that we've got here in the first world, and there are people who don't want to take it. And again, I'm a dude in a tie on YouTube. Like, I'm not telling you what to do. That being said, like, to your point, Luis, you make a really good point. Talk to people who are in hospitals, talk to people in the medical. Like, if you're honest and sincere about whether or not you want it, because again, going back to this idea, you treat people like idiots, and then big pharma is out to make a buck. The government lies to you. There's nothing crazy about somebody not wanting to take a vaccine. There's nothing crazy about that. That's what rational. Yeah, go ahead, Kristen.
I've gotten down on my pro-vaccine friends for bringing up the smallpox vaccine. I'm like, you know about the smallpox vaccine? That wasn't a perfect scenario. That didn't go so well for a lot of years. It was bad. I'm like, don't put that up as a perfect example.
Right. And not to mention that, but, testing on African-American people here in the United States. I mean, these are very real issues. And that's why these things are complex. And that's why they require rational conversation and rational thought and talking through it and trying to hear both sides. I get it. Like, I'm like, man, if everyone just could take the goddamn vaccine, we'd get through this fucking thing, we'd be done with it. But that's my position. That I'm not putting that on you.
98% of people, though, who are uninterested in having that debate to just do the right thing.
It's hard, man. Now it's very difficult with all the information out there. It's very, very difficult. I think, honestly, this is going to be a thing where every year the majority of us are just going to have to get shots. We're going to have to get a booster shot every year because there's going to be a segment of society that refuses to do this. And it's
And beyond that, it
sucks.
won't isolate between countries. So until
Right.
everyone can get,
It's a worldwide issue. But okay, so the vaccines currently are like 95% effective. Like I had the vaccine. I had 2 Pfizer doses. I got COVID. My symptoms were mild headache, exhaustion. Like I was beat for 7 days, exhausted for 7 days, mild headache, mild body aches. And then, but I didn't transmit it
yeah, the
to my
rest of us
family.
didn't get it.
All 4 of my family members did not get it. And I was in the same house with them. I don't know if it was a Delta variant. I assume it was because that's what's blowing up here
Most
in Florida.
likely, yeah.
Right. Most likely it was. And that's highly transmissible. So
And they're saying the
I
vaccines are
congratulate.
only
I'm
about
glad I got the
45
vaccine for that
Yeah.
reason.
They're saying the vaccines are only about 45 to 50% effective in preventing transmission, but they're still very effective in preventing the
Death.
very difficult cases. In
Right.
That's
Yeah.
50%.
Exactly.
That's
They're
huge.
they're really good at preventing you from getting your ass in the hospital and ending up on a ventilator.
Which is why
it's going to feel like the flu, and that is a miracle. A miracle that we were able to produce a drug that quickly that produces that kind of result against a disease that is deadly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
And the fact that we can't appreciate that, oh, that's frustrating.
Well, and people were like, oh, this is brand new technology. This is not new technology. mRNA research goes back a long way. This was not developed overnight. So I think that's something that people just don't quite understand either. Go ahead, Rather. I thought you had something.
Well, yeah, I think that, one of the issues here is that it's really hard to evaluate risk when it pertains to your life or other people's lives. I think a lot of people are way too cavalier and a lot of people are way too conservative. Like it's really hard to know where that sweet spot is. And I thought one of the most hilarious things that Randy Ness said during his interview was the conversation about hearing that tiger growl and having to decide whether you're going to run and expend 100 calories versus losing 10,000 calories. I don't think anyone does that math when they're talking about their big risk. It's different calculus entirely.
That's also true. You know what? See, here's the problem I had with that example is, well, I ain't faster than a fucking leopard. Like last I checked, even if you were the fastest person on the planet, that thing's gonna catch you. Unless you
don't
get
have to
into
be
like
faster
a
than a
car.
leopard. You just have to be faster than the other guy next to you.
Exactly.
If you have another guy
boom.
next to you, if you have another guy next to you. But he didn't put 2 people in that scenario. He just said you. So like even if you climbed up a tree, it's probably gonna get you. Anyway.
Yeah, the cat's out of the bag, Lou.
Cats
Cats are good climbers.
Bears
Bears too, apparently.
Bears are good. Oh yeah, bears can climb, right?
Dude, bears can climb. Yes, bears can climb. Bears are killing machines.
Yeah.
So who was that meowing
I-
earlier? Was that Kristen? I heard
What?
meowing.
Yes, Kristen was meowing.
Yeah, I was meowing.
Are we not very balanced? Not very balanced conversation at all here. Oh well, I thought it was pretty balanced. I thought we were pretty open-minded.
I think a lot of us are pro-vaccine, and there's not a lot of anti-vaccine voices in here, so that seems unbalanced.
I still haven't
But
given my children the Gardasil. There you go.
Well, I think that the suggestion from this show is like, we don't know if we're not medical professionals. Go seek out a medical professional and talk to them.
Yeah,
And they'll all tell you to take the vaccine. So.
I think I retweeted some vaccine related news and someone responded on my Twitter like, well, tell me why I should take it. And I said, dude, I'm a stranger on the internet. I shouldn't be telling you that. Like,
Yes.
go talk to a doctor. I'm not going to do that. Who am I?
I love how I have a buddy up north whose wife is just absolutely brilliant. She's like a physical therapist and she just got another master's degree in something medical. And they're like on his page, just arguing with him. And I'm like, is anybody else here's wife is brilliant?
Right. No, it's funny. I again, like, it's more for me. It's a personal choice. I choose to take the vaccine. I choose to wear my mask. I choose to wash my hands every time I can. And I choose to bring the proper protection where I go. If that's not your choice, cool. Awesome. Go for it.
I definitely believe that it's people's choice. So
it's that, well, obviously it's people's choice, but I wish there would be something, here's the thing with individuality is that when individuality affects your individuality, all of a sudden it's inconvenient. You know, like I think we should give the power to businesses to make up their decision, their policy on what they're going to do with their customers when it comes to their shopping experience at whatever establishment they have. If the restaurant owner feels like,
stay out of my grocery store when I'm there because I don't want to catch that.
well, there you go. You know, and
after what's happened to us, I don't want to go to restaurants where the servers aren't wearing masks. So
well, but this is where the free market starts to take over, right? Because you can have individuals who run these businesses decide, and you can choose to go there or not. Now, the problem is if you live in an underserviced community or a community in poverty, these choices aren't as easy. These choices aren't as available. These choices aren't as, you don't have the same sorts of opportunities. But I do wonder, and here's where I will get a little conspiratorial on this subject of vaccines, is that is there because I don't know if you guys if you guys invest in the stock market or not, but I do a little investing in the stock market, and I kind of keep my ears open for like how CEOs are talking about their companies. And if you heard some of these finance calls from some of these vaccine companies about how their profits from these boosters are going to be raking in some cash, I think that's where we have to hold these people accountable and say, look, you're developing this technology. There needs to be one of you companies can figure out how to do what we did with the polio vaccine and eradicate this fucking thing, right? Not just supply us with endless boosters.
Well, I mean, that comes down to the science, though, because we get a flu vaccine every year. Why haven't we just destroyed the flu?
It's
variant,
different.
Right?
It mutates. It's a different variant every year. And
that's what COVID.
Right, but
the flu vaccine is also super ineffective in comparison to the COVID vaccine. The flu's like between 40 and 70 usually.
But why is that though? Like, we need to get somebody who knows their shit to come on this.
But you want to know something about flu? The numbers for flu have gone down in the last 2 years.
Oh yeah,
you
think one didn't exist
because people are wearing their masks, man.
Right. Yep. Well, I want to mention one thing. I said I agree that it's gross to see that them talk about it in that manner, given what's going on, the profit. However, I will say the data also backs up the need for booster shots. If you look at Israel right now, who got vaccinated before everyone else, they're still doing further and further tests, but every test they're doing right now is showing that as the months go on, the efficacy of the vaccine gets lower and lower and lower. So it's like both, like they're both being gross. And also the data is showing that that's what we need. But then there's a conversation like, okay, what about the other countries that aren't getting any, right? I guess there's no right answer. It feels like.
I mean, this problem goes to a much deeper healthcare issue. Like, I mean, we give the subsidies, we give the money to these pharmaceutical companies to create these drugs, and then we get charged an arm and a leg to use them. But the beautiful thing about the COVID vaccine, I didn't have to pay for my COVID vaccine.
Right. Yeah.
It was free. And then
if you want to be really
how did I pay? Are you talking about through taxes?
$2 billion from the government.
I didn't pay $2 billion, but I understand what you're saying. And again, but it's the subsidies that we gave our government that helped them produce the vaccine. So we should get this vaccine for free. It should be something that we don't have to actually pay out of pocket for because we've already paid for it. But that goes for a lot of our medicines, our medicines, that we get charged through the nose for because they know that the need for it isn't at the scale of a pandemic, and if they charge people $75 even for a COVID shot, that would be crazy.
Not even to mention how much other research, how many other diseases they haven't had the time, energy, money to focus on.
Desire. We're just now developing an AIDS vaccine. Really, guys?
Yeah. But I mean, I will say that the symptom management for AIDS has been incredible.
A lot of progress has been made.
Well, just that South Park episode where they just inject cash into Magic Johnson's veins, and that's the cure for AIDS. just a lot of money. But like like my sister, when we have this healthcare debate all the time about the cost of healthcare and how high it is. She broke it down for me one time. She's like, the reason why our healthcare is so good, it's the best in the world. And I think, I mean,
I disagree.
Well, okay, whose is better? Because I had a feeling somebody else was going to chime in and say, no, I think this country's better. Who do you think?
It depends on every particular field, but like, for example, we're very high in maternal mortality.
No, but I'm talking
mortality.
about the innovation of drugs, the innovation of medical equipment.
Well, that's
Those are very different
machines.
things.
Standard of care.
I'm saying the
Innovation?
the kind of doctor, the standard of doctors that we have here. The reason why doctors from other countries come to this country is because they get paid well for it.
Yeah.
You know, the incentive to create an awesome drug is better here because they know they're going to make money hand over fist, and on top of that they're going to get a subsidy from the government. Oh, okay. You know, like
it's all
we'll
green
create
based.
a wonder drug, and then we're going to charge you $700 for it because we can.
And that's why it's failing. When your medical system's greed based, it's going to fail.
But
yes,
okay, but go on.
It's also succeeding in other places, though. Like the innovation, like I think, for example, let's just say something as simple as a knee surgery. Compare that to 30 years ago here in this country. I think you could get a better knee surgery here than you could anywhere else in the world. Is that a crazy?
But that's
statement?
changing. That's
But
changing.
here,
People, have you ever heard of medical tourism? People are going to Thailand to get these same surgeries at a fraction of the price, and they're damn good surgeries, and they get a vacation on the beach.
Yeah,
bro.
no, dude. A buddy of mine just went to Mexico to have his whole face worked on dentally. You know, I'm tempted to go down to Mexico myself and get some dental work done.
Here's where I think you're right, Luis. I think you're right in the pharma. Big pharma has big profits, which is a big driver for innovation. And
But
so
also medical,
why was Moderna and Pfizer able to develop these vaccines so quickly when companies in India or China or Bangladesh were not? And there's a very clear reason for it. And that's where you're absolutely right, Luis. I mean, when you have incentives, but then they turn around and screw us on the other side.
Well, have you ever heard Chris Rock's stand-up? This was from a few years back, how he was talking about in the neighborhood he lives in, Mary J. Blige is one of his neighbors. Mary J. Blige, okay? The cream of, like, one of the best R&B singers that has ever existed on the face of the planet. And then her neighbor, who's got the house and everything else Mary J. Blige has, is a dentist who created a tool. He just created this little tool that dentists use everywhere, and he's not the best dentist on the planet. You know what I mean? But yet he lives next door to the epitome of R&B.
I'm sure the person who invented the pool noodle lives next to that person.
But that is a little crazy, right? To be like,
it's wild.
Like this top out, you're like, there's not a lot of singers on the planet that are better than Mary J. Blige, but there's a lot of dentists better than the dentist that lives next to her. You know what I mean? Like, and yet he's making the same money as she's making. Like, I'm pointing that out.
He didn't make his money from dentistry. He made his money from invention.
Yeah.
Yes. And entrepreneurship.
But what I'm saying is, in this country, when it comes to the medical field, the innovation of those hardwares coupled with the innovation in pharmaceutical is what drives the expense of it. And how do you provide this world-class technology and hardware and medicine, and while at the same time providing it at the lowest cost possible in a capitalistic society? And again, we talked about this in the beginning. Point to me, how do you do that?
I'd say that it's not capitalist, because the amount of doctors that are admitted to medical school is severely limited, and I think that's probably a number one thing that we should change, in my opinion.
Ooh, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah.
Well, the doctor supply is artificially limited here in the United States. You can't. They only admit a certain amount of people to medical schools, and I think that's solely because there's a
supply and
just
demand.
like the diamonds and the betas.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That makes sense. I mean, it's true. There's only so many medical students that they allow into UCLA or USC every year, and out of those, only so many get promoted to the some of the best positions out there, depending on what kind of student they were, or what they did in their residency, you know, and those things are important. I get, you know, you want to see who the best doctors are, but yeah.
There's a demand for doctors too now, like general practitioners and things like that. A lot of them have gone out of business, moved on. I don't know.
Yeah, especially other countries too. Like you look
areas.
at, I mean, folks who want to say like it's all about socialized medicine, go to the UK right now. No, like I have clients in the UK who are not super well off and who are who are talking about the system, and it's very difficult to get good care right now. This is not, you know, so there's a balance to be maintained. That's why I'm a lefty libertarian.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I know it's not black and white, and we always have to innovate our way out of things, and we always have to look at the gray areas to get more of the truth, because it doesn't exist in black and white. And I know we're approaching the end of the show here, but I definitely think this whole conversation really comes back to this idea that, you know, like even you were talking about greed in the medical system, right? Like greed is a natural byproduct of humans trying to no. Capitalism and greed are a natural human byproduct of survival, of trying to survive in a world with limits and things trying to eat you in the bush.
Yeah.
Those bush eaters.
Any final thoughts here, guys? We gotta go about 2-3 minutes. Anything you were dying to get in there that you weren't able to get in?
I'll just say one quick thing about Lou. I agree with that we have some of the best care in the world, but I think we also fail when people, in order to get that care, have to go bankrupt.
Agreed. 100%.
And that's the problem, right? It's like, how do we make those two? I don't even know the answer, but it's like that's the question,
they don't
right?
even have the choice.
Or they don't have the choice.
They can't even get the care they need, and they desperately want it.
How's your health care up there in Canada right now?
It's great.
Is
it? We have really good health care. Like, we don't pay for having a baby, that's for sure.
Right. And you're able to you need to get looked at, you're having issues with you just go.
And then you show your health card, and it's OHIP. It's Canada wide. Yeah, everybody has it. It's really lucky.
I think it's good. Yeah, I think it's super important super important for us all to get off our damn high horses and say we know what's best. We need to. This was an interesting thing, and I know some of you here do not like Michael Moore at all, but he did an interesting movie a while back called Where to Invade Next, and he basically went into all these different countries and just like figured out the one thing they did the best, and was like, what if we did that? What if, as Americans, we were just like, let's go look at all these different countries, figure out what they do the best. These people do, you know, the criminal justice system the best. Like, look at their outcomes. Like, let's implement that. And why can't we do that? Why are we so stuck in our ways?
Lots of hurdles.
Can we start with the country that does ice cream the best?
That might be us. That's Ben and Jerry's, isn't it?
It might be us.
Vermont.
We must invade Vermont.
Yeah.
Let us go.
Yeah. Oh my God, the rolling hills of Vermont.
Oh, great maple syrup. It's really, really good stuff. Bernie Sanders and his 2 homes.
It's so funny, dude.
Matthew Wright, I'm so sorry. I'm very bad at multitasking, and I can't get to Discord right now. Plus, we're I'll take a look in a minute. Michael, like newlyweds buying a house.
I don't know.
I mean, that might have been in context a moment ago. I have a very short attention span. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. It was such a pleasure to have you. Artemis Prime, thank you so much for not only picking up the ball when I dropped it and not doing a poll today, but coming in and sharing your lovely wisdom with us. We appreciate you and we appreciate your time.
Always.
How can if people want to follow you on social media or they want to invite you onto their show, how do they do that?
Instagram and Twitter is Artemis Prime 24. I'm actually going live tomorrow on Quantum Witch.
Ooh.
Priscilla. So yeah, we're doing like a girls' night, and it'll be really fun. And then Sunday on Alien Girl. So
sweet.
Busy.
Yeah. Well, we'll see you
It'll
there.
It'll be really fun. Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks, Artemis. All right. Aaron Disario, folks want to, maybe follow you on Twitter or hit you up. How do they do that?
I'm at Disario on Twitter. Teen apparently found that I have a YouTube channel with 2 videos on it. So they're very
You do?
specific. Yeah, who knew?
Dude, Tina Tamaszewski kills it with
Smooth.
the links.
She's a
man.
researcher.
She is so fast with these links. It's insane. Love it.
Fantastic. Well,
So,
we really
you can
appreciate.
check out my 2 videos. One was a show that my wife did, a high school show about AIDS awareness, and I think the other one was from Broadway Con when somebody performed a song that I really liked. So,
Or I still see some boxes, so it doesn't look like you're totally settled into the new place. But I see you've got some.
no, not quite there, but yeah, I've got a few things up about my Apple words and various things going on.
We're gonna host a UCR party out at your place sometime. That pool looks fantastic.
Yeah, it's an amazing house. I want everybody to come out and visit.
All right, we're gonna we'll figure that out.
At least everybody from the Unidentified Singularity Review Lab.
You hear that, Chatterverse?
Yeah,
He's
that's
talking to you.
That's what's going to happen when we finally combine these
interwebs.
shows.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. We appreciate your time, brother.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to find the ever enigmatic, the interesting and charismatic Daniel Miller, how would they do that, sir?
I'm on Twitter at psychop1. That's SICCOP1. And soon I'll be making a TikTok about UAP. So it's been in the works for a while, and trying to just explain things succinctly in a evidence-based manner. So quickly.
I love it.
So
yeah, you're gonna have to be quick on TikTok.
Dude,
I love it.
It's tough. It's a tough thing. Making it fast. We'll see how it goes.
All right, brother. Well, it's great to have you. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
As always.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
All right. Rather be squidding. You have an extraordinary YouTube channel. I'd love for people to check it out. How can they do that?
Yeah, you can find me at Rather Be Squidding. The name is quite obvious. And I hope to post a video pretty soon here. So go over and subscribe.
Fantastic.
Hey, Rather, we really appreciate being here. It's always great to see you, my brother. And we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, we'll see
you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, so we've got a show tomorrow on the Unidentified Celebrity View. If you haven't checked us out over there, make sure you click the link below and do so. Who do we got coming on tomorrow?
So tomorrow we've got Zach Seichi from Project Human, and we're gonna have also the Mad Scientist podcast, Chris Cogswell, the host of that show, come on the program, and we're gonna be tomorrow's gonna be a fun conversation because we're gonna be talking about Tucker Carlson in his special and what's the line on enabling somebody who might be hateful, and so we're gonna explore that conversation.
Ooh, so we're digging into politics on UCR tomorrow.
Not so much politics, but
no,
like
it's political though.
It is a
or
little
polarized
bit, if we make it political.
Okay,
you know what I mean? Like I think there's a way to like again. It can't be hyperbolic, but we're going to discuss it.
Damn, we're still getting hate. Look at this. Still getting hate from yesterday, bro. Look, still getting hate from yesterday. No more woo-woo, please.
No, I don't think.
I thought we did a good job of asking tough questions, pushing them on. Like we said, what differentiates you from a cult? We asked that point blank.
Here's what we need: we need Mark Sims to come on by himself. We need Tyler Zarandic to come on by himself, and we need Daniel Sheehan to come on
for a full 2 hours.
For a full 2 hours, so we could really dive deep into their philosophies, the people that they are, and ask them hard questions without it coming off insulting. Because I mean, they have to admit their statements should require hard questions, but in a panel type discussion, sometimes those things don't happen. But we're gonna get him back on because I am fascinated. I am fascinated to talk to Mark because I mean somebody brought up like a good point. Like these extraterrestrial, they believe extraterrestrial beings come from billions of miles, and we could communicate with them on a cheap radio walkie-talkie system. It sounds crazy. It does, and that's okay to ask those questions.
Absolutely,
but just as long as you're not telling them they're crazy,
right?
That's the line.
I completely agree. I think it's important to hold people accountable. It's important to, it's like
I thought we did.
I thought we did too. I thought we did. Matthew Riot doesn't. He doesn't think we did. That's all right. He just likes hurting. He says, "I don't mind hurting people's feelers."
I love that he put a little Spanish too. Mark's a pendejo. It's funny, but it's not nice.
Be nice, Matthew.
Be nice, Matthew. We listen, man. If we're gonna believe UAPs are real, we have to be open to the idea of what they could be and who may or may not be contacting them, and let's have the conversation.
Yeah.
Let's see where it goes.
That's what I love about UCR. That's what I love about what we do here in the Singularity Lab is we're willing to have conversations with people we don't agree with because it sparks greater debate. It sparks more diverse, thinking, and we have to be thinking in ways that are diverse and not just linear. So, anywho. We love you guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please listen to Jazz Shaw when he tells you to support UAP transparency and the Big Phone Home 2. You're going to catch us September 4th, 5th, and 6th. I always say 4th, 5th, and 6th. 4th, 5th,
you got to get those dates down, Michael.
Got to get them down. It's too close to be making mistakes.
Like me with the numbers.
4th, 5th, and 6th.
Too close to be making mistakes. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for joining the Singularity Lab. We're going to see you tomorrow night, Wednesday night on UCR. Make sure you join us back on Thursday. We're going to have a compatriot of Jazz Shaw. Chris Plain is going to be joining us to talk about his most recent articles. Maybe Jazz can join us for the panel after that. That'll be dope.
Friday we got John Greenwald.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Friday, John Greenwald.
So
heck be fun. It's going to be a big week still to go, guys. We'll see you tomorrow night at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Peace. All right. Ciao, ladies and gentlemen.